Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our second EnergyREV seminar on Governance Insight series. So this is a lunchtime seminar. We're doing them approximately monthly, and we're going to have them on all sorts of topics, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But what we're trying to do through this seminar series is really tease out some of these policy and regulatory issues and learnings from EnergyREV and the wider work relevant to smart local energy systems. That's what it's all about. It's all about policy and regulation. So my name's Jeff Hardy. I lead the Energy Revolution Research Consortium's work on governance. I'll tell you a little bit about EnergyREV now so you understand what this all means. So EnergyREV is a consortium of about 50 researchers from around 22 universities up and down the UK. And we're part of the government's Prospering from the Energy Revolution programme. That's a £100 million programme which is trying to demonstrate, design, test smart local energy systems of the future today in real places, real people. And what EnergyREV is doing is helping that programme, but it's also learning from it. And that's what we're trying to tease out in this seminar series. What are the policy and regulatory learnings? What do we need to change to let these smart local energy systems fly in the future? Now, before we start, a little bit of housekeeping. So firstly, you'll see that this event is being recorded, and that's so that we can publish it afterwards. So our last event is on our EnergyREV YouTube website. My colleague, Dr. Madeline Morris, who is the brains behind this entire operation and deserves all of the credit for what's going on here, will put a link in to where you can see our previous one, which was about the role of smart local energy systems in post-pandemic economic recovery. Other things to bear in mind. So there are live captions available, and you can use the caption button to toggle this on or off. And I understand it works quite well, although you'll have to bear with it as it's, I think, operating on some sort of artificial intelligence, which could result in some interesting things. Throughout the event, you can submit questions, and we really want your questions on this. And you can do that through the Q&A button, and you can do this, you can either leave us your name or you can post them anonymously. And as you are a participant, you can upvote questions. So you can tell us which ones you think are the most important, and they will come through to us, and we'll be able to put those on to our panelists. And if you would like to hear about future seminars, could you please sign up on our EnergyREV website? So there's a contact address on our EnergyREV website. You can sign up there and you'll get a newsletter on a regular basis, which will tell you about all sorts of events that we run, including these ones. Now then, let's talk briefly about today. So today we have a really exciting and incredibly relevant topic going on. So today's seminar is on training and skills needed for smart local energy systems. And the report that accompanies the presentation has just been launched today on EnergyREV's website. So you'll be able to find a link to that. I think my colleague Maddie is going to post a link to that so you can come and look at the report after you've heard the presentation. So my colleague, Dr. Rosanna Chichian from the University of Bristol is going to talk about this report. She's done it together with her colleague, Caroline Bird. But we also have two panelists to help discuss this report as well. So she's going to be joined by Luke Nightingale. So Luke is a team leader for economic opportunities for net zero at the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, and also Neil Commode. So Neil is Managing Director of the European Marine Energy Centre. He's also chair of the Orkney Research Renewable Energy Forum. And Neil is very heavily involved in one of the Prospering from the Energy Revolution projects, Project Reflex on the Isle of Orkney. So the way in which we're going to work today is Rosanna's going to give us a 10-minute presentation outlining the findings of the report. Then we're going to have Luke and Neil both come back and give some remarks, some response to the report, and then we're going to get straight into your Q&As. So don't hold back. Let's have those up and running as soon as we possibly can. But in the meanwhile, I am delighted to introduce my colleague Rosanna, who's going to take us through the findings of this important report.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Jeff. So I'm going to talk about the report on skills needs for transitioning to smart local energy systems. And this is specifically a case study of Bristol City as a smart local energy system. And so the full report is available online, and Maddie will share the link in a minute. And I will only focus on some of the findings of this, so there is much more in the report to see. Now then, I will talk about two questions today. So what are the challenges of transitioning to this smart local energy system, and what skills do we need? So what are the challenges? Okay, but let's just take a step back for a minute and say, what is a smart local energy system? Obviously, if it is smart, it implies that it has got some interconnected automated decision-making support. If it's local, it implies some geographically bound locality. And then it's obviously a system, which implies that it has a set of components which are working together closely for a common goal. So that's what smart local energy system is. But interestingly, when we started working on the case study for Bristol, what we immediately noticed is that smart local energy system is not a system in its normal sense, because it has got not a number of components working closely together, but a number of subsystems which are loosely interconnected and sometimes not even working together. So a subsystem is a system of its own. And for the case of Bristol, a smart local energy system, we identified 7 of those, which is citizens and communities, a local government, transport and mobility, building and retrofit, the traditional energy generation and supply, community energy groups, and the ICT infrastructure and digital technologies that supports this smart decision making. Now, each of these subsystems has got an independent operational goal. So transport and mobility doesn't exist to optimize local energy generation and consumption. It is there to help transport people and goods from place to place. They are each managed independently and governed independently, and they have got their own behaviors. But when we want them to be contributing to the smart local energy system, we expect them to be working together for a common goal. And this is exactly where the challenges in transitioning to smart local energy systems are rooted. So the first challenge is lack of this holistic understanding. What does this system of systems mean? What is it comprised of? How does it work together? And how should it work together as a single system rather than a set of this kind of interdependent but very much independent in a way subsystems as well. The second challenge is the lack of integration between these subsystems. So they are much too disjoint currently for composing a single coherent system to work together. And finally, the challenge of operating this system of systems. Okay, so these are the challenges, and then let's say, so what are the skills that we need to help us to tackle these challenges? How do we need to work to address this transition to smart local energy system issue? So as I already said, given that each subsystem is an independent system of itself, we will have a set of skills that are necessary in order to support the functioning, development and transition to a clean zero carbon state of that subsystem itself, say be it transport and mobility, building and retrofit, and so on. So each of those subsystems need to have a set of its own skills. And in fact, a lot of this kind of subsystem-wide skills needs studies are actually carried out by various bodies within UK already. But then there is also a lot of skills which are necessary in order for these subsystems to be integrated. This is a set of skills that go across these subsystems. And these are generally, we have grouped them into 4 general areas: the skills related to ICT, skills related to distribution network integration within the energy systems, those related to policy and regulations, which provide an environment within which these subsystems can integrate and collaborate and cooperate for a flourishing smart local energy system provision, and skills of people, because we need to keep in mind always that a smart local energy system is not something which can be delivered from outside. This is something that needs to exist in people's houses. This is something that people need to be engaged with, for it to be an environment in homes and the services that people take up and collaborate with. So you can't actually have a smart mobility system without individuals deciding that they are going to move to use electric vehicle, for example. So these are the areas within which the skills across subsystems need to be developed. Now I'll talk a little bit about the specific challenges and how we can address those challenges that I mentioned before. The first one was the lack of the holistic view on the systems of systems. And the way forward is, first of all, to understand that in order for the subsystems to work together, they have to agree on a common goal. And so, for example, coming back to the case study of Bristol, the Bristol City Council has taken a leadership in this, and they have developed in discussion through citizen assemblies and discussion with stakeholders across the city, a one city plan, which underlines the important areas and the priorities that the city as a whole within communities and businesses need to address. So agree a common goal across the subsystems with all the stakeholders participating in it. Build a mutual understanding and common vocabulary across the subsystems. For example, when we talk to community energy groups and we talk about energy optimization, they say, yes, we optimize it, we generate and use it as much as possible ourselves. And then we talk to optimization with energy suppliers and they say, yes, we optimize it. We move away consumption from peak times as much as possible through various services. So the same thing means same term means different things to different communities. And they don't appreciate each other's role. So for example, when we talk about smart local energy system, why do we need to talk about building and retrofit? They don't have anything to do with optimization of energy generation and consumption, one might say. But actually, this is the places at which the consumption is happening and increasingly generation as well. So we really need to build an understanding and appreciation of each other's contribution across the subsystems to the smart local energy system as a whole. And then acceptance of renewable energy technologies within communities and across communities, across the businesses. So why should I invest into such a long-term project which is going to potentially pay back in 30 years? Is it very risky for me to do that? And all clean energy technologies are such. And that's where the education and communication and explanation to citizens as well as the businesses is relevant. Again, leadership needs to be taken in this. The second one is providing the infrastructure, the physical infrastructure, for integrating the generation and consumption technologies, as well as the infrastructure for data and communication exchange, information exchange to support this decision making. And the third challenge is providing structures to support the governance and operation of this system of system as a whole. So it is necessary to have a cross-system managing body, which is not currently actually present in Bristol, but we have precedences of this. For example, within the health and energy poverty, there is a cross-system body which integrates NHS, local government, representatives for them to be able to make the best decisions for the community members as a whole. So a similar body needs to be there to help integrate perspectives from each of these subsystems and make decisions which are optimizing not only the goals of individual subsystems, but also the common goal of smart local energy system, which I haven't mentioned, is to optimize the generation and consumption, as well as reduce the negative impact of the energy system as a whole. And then finally, there has to be a framework for conflict resolutions, because what is optimal to one subsystem is often not so optimal for the other. So if you're optimizing the traffic through community, critical areas of community, for example, that's not optimal for community, but is optimal for traffic management, for example, mobility system. So how do we resolve these conflicts? And again, local authorities can take leadership in this, for example. And to summarize, the skills across and within the subsystems are varied. The first impression of things being very much focused on engineering side is very misleading. Of course, engineering set of skills is critical because we need to engineer a new kind of an infrastructure. But equally important are skills for trades. For example, you can't install charging points without digging and building. And so those things are also very important. Managerial skills for large, complex, long-term projects, energy policy, soft skills for communication and engaging and education are critical as well. So there's a myriad of skill sets which are really important and need to be equally prioritized for a smart local energy system of systems to really flourish. And so to conclude, what I kind of wanted to say is key things to do is really establish a common understanding and a goal across this semi-independent subsystems, helping them to see where they're all going together. And although they all each individually have other things to do, the goal of energy optimization needs to be also considered across all the subsystems. And then oversee that the operation and orchestrate that the communication and integration of these subsystems is handled properly, and define what kind of a system of systems are you going to build, how close do you want those subsystems to be integrated. And so there you are. That's a kind of the main things, and questions are welcome. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Rosanna. That was a really nice and clear presentation. I've seen a couple of questions coming through already, but we'll hold on that because I want to bring in our panelists for some response as well. So, Luke, I'm going to come to you first, if that's okay. Clearly, skills are on the mind of government at the moment, with the 10-point plan, energy white paper, and a slew of announcements coming over the next year or so in the lead up to COP26. So I guess this Bristol case study may echo quite well what's happening more across the nation at the moment. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you've just heard, and also maybe some of the things that government's up to at the moment.
Yeah, thanks very much. So hi everyone, Luke Nightingale. My job title in the Department for Business, Energy, Industrial Strategy is Team Leader for Economic Opportunities for Net Zero. I think that also gives you a bit of a clue as to sort of how the government sees the net zero agenda as well, as one that can drive growth and skills and economic benefit to the UK, as well as obviously doing the important job to decarbonise the economy. So I've just been asked to give you a bit of a reflection on what the government's doing, and I'm going to talk about sort of two main things. Firstly, the sort of big macro picture, the work that we're doing to deliver what we call a green industrial revolution through the 10-point plan, and also the work that we're doing on skills. And I think there is a lot of parallels and a lot of really interesting insight from Rosanna's report that I've certainly found one really helpfully chimes with the work that we're doing so far, and two, provides that a really good basis for thinking about what future policy could look like. So I just wanted to go back 6 months. 6 months ago yesterday, we announced the 10-point plan. You may have seen, if you're a bit of a parliamentary buff like me, the Secretary of State giving an update on that to the House yesterday. But I think it's important to reflect on what a sort of landmark announcement that was. £12 billion mobilised of government funding, and with the aim of leveraging 3 times that from the public sector. Sorry, from the private sector, supporting 250,000 jobs by 2030, providing long-term market signals for companies and investors to organise around, supporting new industries in the UK, like development of CCUS and hydrogen, and providing support for our already fantastic wind sector, the auto sector, and the retrofitting of buildings. So covering a lot of the things that Rosanna was talking about in her report. I just want to give you a bit of a flavour of what's actually happened since November, since that announcement. So obviously the Energy White Paper came out shortly afterwards in December, and that sets out how we're going to deliver the world's first net zero electricity system, and some really big commitments in there, and really tells the story in more detail about how the electricity system is going to have to transform over the coming 30 years. We've also this year published our first industrial decarbonisation strategy, setting out the support for and vision for a prosperous industrial sector in the UK that is in line with our net zero targets. And you know, we've seen like huge progress on these initiatives already. So last year, you would have seen, I think, the record 2 months of coal-free electricity generation, first time since the Industrial Revolution. And only a few weeks ago, a new wind power record with offshore and onshore wind generating 48.5% of the electricity on the grid in Great Britain. The centre of the 10-point plan was very much around supporting jobs and new industries in the UK. One of the big announcements was around support for supply chains in wind and developing those industries in the UK. So we've confirmed 95 million investment in 2 offshore wind ports. Able Marine Energy Park on the south bank of the River Humber received £75 million of government investment, and the Teeswork Offshore Manufacturing Centre receiving 20 million. We've also seen in the last few weeks GE Renewables announced they expect to create 470 new green jobs to support the Dogger Bank wind farm, which is going to be the world's largest offshore wind farm just off the northeast coast. Kicked off the work on carbon capture and storage. So process launched earlier this month to decide the first locations of those industrial hubs, with £1 billion of investment going into that industry as a whole. £1 billion again into the public sector decarbonisation scheme, which will support 30,000 jobs, and that will help decarbonise our schools and hospitals and public buildings. And EV charging again, which I think is as Rosanna mentioned, is central to all of this. We've seen 20 million committed to more on-street charging points, again very recently, and we'll be bringing forward our transport decarbonisation plan in the run-up to COP as well. But this report is very much about skills, and that's the piece of work that I'm leading on. I'm not an expert in smart electricity systems, but I'm looking at the government's work on how we make sure we have the skilled workforce to deliver net zero. And you're right, this is really central to a lot of the thinking. There's good research by the LSE that suggests that about 20% of the workforce, about 6 million people, are going to see their demand for their skills either go up or down as a result of net zero. And that's obviously a big challenge for us as a country, but also a huge opportunity as well. And you know, I was really pleased to see in the report that and in Rosanna's presentation that it's not just the engineering skills. There is a understandable focus on those in many ways, and they are important because we will need an army of people to build wind farms and retrofit homes and make electric cars and batteries, and we'll also need conservationists and people working in the nature industry to drive forward our goals there. But you don't get this huge transformation without the finance, without the project management, without the increasingly important digital and data skills that are mentioned in this report. to name a few. It's obviously very pleasing to see policy skills named in there as well. You know, it's I think that's something that we increasingly think will be important as the system moves on for the next 30 years. Then, so our response to that has been to set up the Green Jobs Task Force, working with industry, unions, the skills sector, and it's kind of been set up to give us ideas effectively about what this challenge is and try and bring together the evidence into one place and think about the skills system, the green skills system as a whole, which I hope you will welcome. I think there is lots of work going on across Whitehall in various different areas, and what we're trying to do is bring some of that together and bring that work that's going on in different sectors together as well, to try and understand what the challenge is and what we can do to support those skills in the future. We're going to look to build on what we're already doing. So you've probably heard of the National Skills Fund, 2.5 billion over the course of this Parliament, support people to retrain and fulfill their potential. And the Lifetime Skills Guarantee, sort of central to the new Skills White Paper, enabling all adults to get their first full level 3 qualifications through that funding. And then there's also very exciting work going on around green apprenticeships and how we can make sure that we've got the right training and skill provision for people coming into the market as well. So that's just a flavour of the things that we're doing. I just want to say thanks again for the report. I think it's incredibly thought-provoking. It really shows the importance of looking at this as a whole system rather than in a silo. And I know that that's not always what government and other parts of the public sector, I've come from a local government background myself, you know, are always best at, but I think this is a really good and thought-provoking way of setting out those challenges, and I look forward to the discussion. So, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Luke. Clearly, we know it's a very busy agenda, certainly in the run-up to COP, but also over the next 30 odd years of like utter energy system transformation. So that was an excellent canter through all of the things that are going on. And you know, I'm noticing some hooks that Rosanna and colleagues might want to come back in and have a chat with your colleagues in BEIS about as well. Now, I want to come over to Neil. Neil, amongst many other things, is doing one of these smart local energy systems and has been for many years on the Isle of Orkney. So Neil, your remarks and thoughts on the report and the wider skills challenge.
Thanks, Jeff. That's for the introduction and the opportunity to just have a chat about this. Very interesting, and I'm actually really glad I'm here at this meeting, because it's so easy for so many of these reports to come past and you don't really pay attention to them. This is really useful to draw the attention that this report really deserves. I was very taken by several of the points that were made in it. You know, we are nearly 700 miles north of Bristol, but so many of the points that were made resonate with us up here, up in Orkney. The Reflex project is once again part of the PIFA schemes, and so many pieces did resonate. Stuff like the fact of needing to have a common goal and also a common view, a common vocabulary. One of the things we often feel in an island location is that we have a very good coterminus of our boundaries. In other words, everybody can recognise when you get to the beach. So we don't have a local authority and a planning authority and a parks or organisations which have got different boundaries. And that common view of boundary we find is really empowering. And I think that came through in the report, that that's a very helpful thing to have when you're trying to mobilise people to generate change. So that was really interesting. I was also very taken by the fact that it is not just a technology play. And a lot of the stuff that we've done here, the people who came together were very much technical, and I would say we struggled with, but certainly it's been some of the more challenging areas of some of the softer social aspects that are needed, particularly things like what's going on with, say, things like data. So the restrictions that exist on the passing of data as a result of GDPR, and the need to work with organisations that have to pass data between them in order to make something work, is something that is not, we found, widely understood by a lot of people within companies. So they understand their own personal data, but they don't necessarily understand when data can become personal. And that's been an interesting thing. And I think there's definitely a greater training and skilling that's going to be needed in that sort of space. And I was also taken by the element about the governance side of things and getting people to work together. We too have got something of a system of different people from different companies working together, and that does create its challenges, not least because they often have got different scales and therefore different corporate momentum and inertia, but also their different motivations. Somebody once described partnership to me as the temporary suspension of mutual loathing. I'm not going that far, but I would say that partnership is very much about having to submerge your own corporate egos on occasions to allow the decisions to be taken for the greater good of the project, and those things take time to work out and have the structures by which tensions and challenges can actually be surfaced and then reconciled. So all in all, I think it's an excellent report, and I'd really commend people to looking at it. Very happy to take questions and do some compare and contrast stuff, but yeah, thanks so much to Rosanna and her team for pulling this all together.
Wonderful, thank you so much, Neil. And no doubt we'll hear a little bit more from you on kind of like some of the real experience of doing this in particular place in the UK. So we have lots of questions in. Thank you very much for doing that. Remember, you've got the upvote function as well in your questions. So I'm going to do this the easy way from a chair's point of view and pick the questions that have got the most votes, because that helps me immensely do it. So the first one I'm going to come to is a question from Richard. And the question is, do we need something like an energy transformation commission to help get different systems to work towards common goals and get a strategic direction for change? Now I'm going to come to you, Rosanna, on this one first. Everyone else is welcome, of course, but you already mentioned that something about this coordinating body was outlined in your case study. So perhaps any more thoughts on that?
Yes, I think that's exactly what we are actually suggesting. I think this is this was one clear point that we made, that there needs to be a coordinating body, and this is essential because there's so many stakeholders engaged, right? And as I said, sometimes you don't even think that these people might be relevant, because initially when we said, for example, retrofit is relevant to smart local energy systems, some of our colleagues were, what are you talking about? Why is it at all? You know, there is nothing smart about retrofit. It's a very dumb thing to do. But they are equally important and key stakeholders within this. So yes, there has to be a coordination body, and there has to be a representative body, because otherwise some of the players will be left out. And so the short answer is yes. And in case of Bristol, we feel that the local authorities are really well placed to take this kind of leadership. So when you say commission, you mean something potentially at higher level in the government, but local energy systems are local. So you have to have this kind of a body at a local level. Of course, then they can also report to kind of some kind of commission, but the local engagement and local participation and local coordination across these bodies is critical.
Wonderful, thank you, Rosanna. Neil or Luke, do you want to come in on that? Just give me a nod. Neil, please.
Yeah, so I think by a commission, I think we mean like a higher power, somebody that things can get referred up to, and certainly we felt that would be useful, and certainly the PIFA project as a whole, we found that there are things that stayed down in the weeds, and it would have been useful to have a mechanism by which we could have elevated things on some occasions. And we suspect that there are probably a lot of things which would benefit from a bit of regulatory polishing. I speak as an ex-regulator, by the way, so I feel justified in rendering some criticism, because generally speaking, the snags we've often found were ones of regulatory omission rather than actual regulatory obstruction. And so having a mechanism by which they can be surfaced is really helpful, and that's where I think the EnergyREV policy group is helpful. I think I'd have liked to have better engaged with that earlier, and I think that would have taken, we should have hypothecated more time in our project planning for some of this stuff to be fighting these battles in the background rather than just concentrating on the frontline stuff all the time. So if a commission is the mechanism by which that happens, that would be okay. But certainly a higher power to which discussions could be taken, I think, is essential for this stuff, because a revolution is going to involve change.
Brilliant. Luke, was there anything you wanted to bring in on that one?
I mean, yeah, I think it's an interesting idea. I've got to confess that I'm not 100% decided on what we already have in this space. So, but it seems in many ways that I think what you're talking about is having sort of more of that local decision making and bringing people together on it. Yeah, I didn't really have much further to add, but because it's not something that I'm 100% aware of, but I think it's probably what I could say is that the engagement that the task force has done, the task force is kind of independent of government, is certainly thrown up similar suggestions, I suppose.
You are muted, Jeff.
So professional on my muting until that point. So I'm going to take two questions together because they're both about skills and the skills fund and education and training. So we've got questions from Kel, Greer and Ola. So Ola's question is about if skills are in the centre of the analysis, do you have any recommendations for education institutions or career pathways of current professionals? And then Kel's question is more, I think specifically to Luke, but it's about whether the National Skills Fund provides a portal to support people to get into the green sector. So there's a comment that basically says Kel has been to many events around skills and always inundated with requests where people can look to see how they can transition from one sector to another, or start taking up qualifications to get into that space. So Luke, would you be all right if I came to you first on that, and then I think Rosanna wants to come in afterwards?
So I think National Skills Fund is about being responsive to local employer needs, and so the programs that will be delivered through that are really what local areas are looking for. So I think it's kind of slightly about making sure that the local areas are picking up on these opportunities and that they are cognizant of the importance of supporting people to go into those green sectors and the fact that those sectors are going to grow. I think that's kind of where it currently is. I do think that I'm sure that local areas will increasingly see the importance of green skills and therefore be bidding into the National Skills Fund to deliver those types of initiatives coming forwards.
Thank you, Luke. Rosanna, you wanted to come in as well.
Yes, so a question was if there is anything to say about educational institutions and about the career pathways. So that was all those questions. So about educational institutions, what's very interesting is that, and maybe obvious, but not to me until I actually looked into this, that there isn't a level of education to which we can say this is your job. This is a transition which affects every layer from school, where what we need is for people to understand what renewable energy is. This is school children, and start to engage with it, because people graduating, finishing school need to be able to make a decision about what kind of energy suppliers do they go with, for example, or which services do they want to subscribe to. From school onwards to the university, but also all intermediate professional levels. And it is very important that in each of these educational and training providing areas, the support and the funding and the right kind of funding is there. For example, talking about building and retrofit, we don't have people going to train and get the qualifications, although some qualifications are already there for example, professional retrofitting. But that means that a builder needs to be out of work for a time and go to do some kind of training, and that builder is not going to get any income for that time. And if you say actually we got some funding for example, in future-proof project, which is run in Bristol, there is come and do some training and will pay your costs, still is not sufficient, because if you're talking about a small business, you are paying the wages of a person to go for a day's training. What about the costs that are, for example, for management side of it, or for accountant who is going to be working with that small business, whose salary is not paid by the builder doing a job and bringing that in. So so not only the individual's salary, but also the operational cost of the business which is lost need to be included into this, covering for education for the small businesses to participate. And so and this goes from, as I say, from bottom, from school up to the university level. For example, in university level, we have the thing that we train very well our graduates in ICT, but they don't have any actual experience of working in a large professional environment on large systems. And you throw all this smart local energy system data on them, and they go, oh, I have no idea what to do, it's too much. So so some of the things is not the education itself that needs to change, but the practical side of it. How to practically integrate the skills into the education is also important. So that's about education and the career pathways. This is a very apt question as well, because, for example, looking at the heat pump installations, by 2030, Bristol is intending to move into carbon neutral city, become carbon neutral city, which implies that all the gas boilers need to be uninstalled in Bristol and all the alternative things to be installed. But so we need to train in Bristol, I don't know, several thousand people to uninstall the gas boilers. What's going to happen after these 5-6 years of active employment of these people? They're suddenly going to become obsolete because that skill is no longer required. Well, in Bristol area at least. So what is important, what we recommend in here is that you do not train a single track professionals. So if you are going to train somebody as a career in gas boiler decommissioning, you also need to train the same person in longer term relevance skills, such as, for example, heat pump installation. And they're not necessarily very closely related. One is electrical, the other one is gas systems. But so you need to really consider what's going to be the career of this person, not only for 5 years, but then thereafter as well. So that has to do with the equity of transitioning to this kind of a new system as well.
Excellent, thank you, Rosanna. Neil, I think you wanted to come in briefly on this one as well.
Yeah, so I think Rosanna's covered the point I was hoping we were going to get to, and that is about making sure we understand that this is a program and there is a life cycle to this, and making sure that the funding is sufficient to enable people to want to do this. The other thing I'd also draw people's attention to is the fact that the builders, doesn't matter how much you train them, they'll generally do what they did the last time that didn't give rise to a complaint the last time they did a similar job. So they will tend to overspec stuff because they don't want to waste money or having to go back to a property and then do some further work. So we need to get to a point where we have found a way to encourage them to actually use the training they've had, and knowing that they're not going to be out of pocket for this weird thing that you've just taught them all about, because it's not really that weird, but they think it's weird until they know it really works. And you've got to get them over that hump. So you need to help make sure that they know that they're going to do this installation, they're not going to be out of pocket for doing this, and therefore they'll use the training, as opposed to saying, yeah, it's really interesting, but I'm not doing that because I know this thing here works and it will save me money. So I think there's some interventions beyond just the training side.
Excellent, thank you, Neil. I'm going to come to a question from Melina in Surrey County Council next, and just to tee you up, Neil, I'm going to see if you want to tackle it first, having worked on a project with a range of partners on smart local energy systems. So the question is, what would be your recommendation for local authorities to build their understanding as to how they can get involved in smart local energy planning? From a county council perspective, we want to engage on this aspect, but we are not sure where to start from. Sometimes it looks like activities for local energy planning are to be undertaken in a different, smaller scale. I'm sure that we could play an important strategic role in partnership with our district boroughs, distribution network operators, community groups, etc., if we could develop a clear understanding of how to drive this. So you've been driving one, Neil. Do you have any thoughts? Not to put you on a spotlight or anything like that, but off you go.
Oh, cheers, Jeff. Okay, interesting point. It's very difficult to know to give advice because they don't necessarily know where people are starting from, but certainly there is a point about making sure that there is a good understanding of your own energy needs and making sure you've got the tools to be able to assess that. So in Orkney's case, we have had energy audits done, but they've actually been commissioned in part by the council, but done by local businesses. But the council has learned from that, and they've also got people within the council who are advocates of this. I think the main point is getting good communication between the energy anoraks that exist in the various organisations is really, really important. Make sure that they can feel they can share and discuss, and between them they'll find a way to make it work. Parachuting in, telling people how to do stuff is really unpopular. Trying to find a way to get the people to communicate and understand what skills are already there and what knowledge they've got, and be able to have a means by which you can explore one's own ignorance amongst others who may know something that can help you fill in those gaps, I think would be really useful. So the forum piece of OREF, the Orkney Renewable Energy Forum, is really useful. So I'd suggest some forum where you can get these people together to talk about stuff and find out what they already know and start from there.
Excellent. Thank you, Neil. Rosanna or Luke, is there anything you want to come in on that one, or we can crack on to other questions if not?
I will comment a little bit about what Bristol is doing. So Bristol City Council is lucky in the sense that they have an energy unit which is 40 strong, which is not very usual, I know. But what I can also say is that they're very open to experience sharing. So first thing, if you are interested, I will happily put you in touch with colleagues from Bristol City Council as the energy team, and maybe you can have a chat with them. The second thing is they are establishing a very explicit partnership with community energy groups. And community energy groups is amazing how educated many of them are about local energy needs and opportunities. And so that's what they are doing. They have actually signed a formal collaboration agreement with the Bristol Energy Network, which is a network of community groups. So that's another thing to do. And all the things that Neil mentioned as well, but finally the key thing that Bristol is doing is one city plan, and that's consultation with the stakeholders about what do they want, consultation with businesses who want to do what, and having set the priorities, and energy is one of the priority areas, then there is a call for who wants to do what, and then tender setting about who can contribute what. So again, that's probably something that could be discussed a little bit with the energy team in Bristol City Council, but these are the initiatives which are happening already in Bristol.
Excellent, thank you, Rosanna. I'm going to move on to, I think, what will be the final two questions we'll tackle today. So I want to leave a little bit of time for you all to have a final say at the end of this. But I want to combine two questions on, I guess, roles and softer skills. Those are the two that are coming through. So there's a question from Leo Paul at Imperial College London, as it happens, no favouritism. But his question is about how key players share the different roles in integrating the subsystems. So Rosanna, you described those 7 subsystems in Bristol as quite separate, but whether or not there are key players in the middle of that kind of share some of the roles across them. So perhaps integrate or kind of like transverse between those things. And then Nick's question is about how these softer skills matter in ensuring the success of smart local energy systems. So he's saying that the success of these systems is ensuring that the households, businesses, public sector are able to participate in things like local energy markets, flexibility markets, network services, whatever it might be. But that requires some set of capabilities or skills. You know, it might be technical capabilities, you know, having the kits in homes or businesses. It could be digital capabilities, so being able to use platforms, markets, etc., and other kind of capabilities. So have you any insight from the work you've been doing, Rosanna, or from real experience, Neil, or from the point of view of kind of like the wider program of work going on in government, Luke? So Rosanna, you're off mute. I'm going to come to you first.
Okay, so the first question was about what are the institutions, I think, or stakeholders, if I understood right.
Roles. So are there kind of roles within those kind of like different system of systems that kind of like operate across those sort of 7 subsystems and so forth? So important integrating roles.
Yes, yes, I think there are, first of all, if you talk about a system of system projects, they are large complex projects, and one of the critical role that goes with any such thing is the manager. And it's surprising how much in many cases it's kind of traditional management skills, but very specifically having a capacity or ability to work with a large set of stakeholders for a long period of time across different timelines. Because I mean, I'm sure probably Neil has a lot of experience in this, that, you know, if you are trying to, for example, integrate the charge points across the city, it's a long negotiation with where is it going to be, which substations are going to be having the capacity, which ones are going to be reinforced. Is it legal to install this thing on a road? For example, in Bristol's case, they had to devise a completely new process for installing things on the road, providing borders, you know, because you cannot have less than 1.2 meters of the walkway reduced any more than that. And then if you have to have a charge point installed, then what do? You go on to do it on the road. So, so the manager, but also the technical personnel. So, for example, in one of the projects that we looked within Bristol City, we were the technical development. I'm talking about software engineering kind of infrastructure developers were completely frustrated because they didn't have line of sight of each other. So they weren't able to talk to each other and to understand what's going on. And so this is across different subsystems. The technical developers need to be able to talk to each other as well. So it's a kind of a shared role as well. But most importantly, I think it's the ability to communicate and understand each other's perspective. And the other point to do, and I didn't share the figure, but all these subsystems have got a myriad of interconnections from one to another, and again at different levels. So, for example, your distributor, energy distribution service provider, which is Western Power in Bristol, for example, will have to work with community energy, will have to work with local government. So yes, they will have to work with everybody, basically. Same is the local authorities, they have to regulate everybody. Same is, for example, the community energy, they have to talk who is going to be using what we generate. Okay, it's a community, but then whom do we sell the rest of it? How do we? So each of these subsystems is tightly interwoven into the activities of each other. So there isn't necessarily a single role saying that this is the most critical role or the most important, but each of these subsystems have got like policy making role. The city council will say set a policy on 20% for each new build to have renewable own generation, and then the building needs to provide it, building providers, and they can talk to community energy providers to get it as a common thing.
Excellent.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, excellent. No, and if I remember rightly from your report, there's some really cool system dynamics charts in there that shows some of these dynamic nature of the roles. So I'm going to turn to Luke and then Neil really briefly to come back on any of the points in those two questions. And then I'm going to go back around Rosanna, then Luke, then Neil for the 30 seconds of final points, and then we're going to close out. So Luke, over to you.
No, I think Rosanna's made some really excellent points there, and actually through a lot of the engagement and reading and research that we've been doing to support the Green Jobs Task Force, this question of the fact that people, it's not just enough to have the technical skills anymore, people need to have the soft skills. I think And that goes across every industry, but it's what industry want as well. They continually ask for people to have the good communication, digital skills, etc. Your car mechanic is no longer a car mechanic. They're also got to be someone that's really FA with programming, etc. It's things like that. I think retrofit of housing is really, really important as well, because the person that is advising people on the heating system is often the person installing it as well. So yeah, I think that probably it chimes with lots of the things I think we've heard through that work.
Brilliant, thank you, Luke. And Neil, any comments on those questions?
Yeah, once again, the soft skill stuff, I think we've got to recognise that the first people through house doors need to be sales people to some extent for this, because these people who have agreed to have this thing done onto their houses are part of a mission, and they've got to feel part of something. So there is a definite need to help people bind them into a team and a feeling of progress. If you get the people going in, they're just a sort of jobs worth, I don't know, I'm doing this, I'll do it, mate. That sort of approach is a lost opportunity to evangelize and create other champions in the immediate area. That's one. So those soft skills, I think we've got to really skill people up in that. Second thing is really about not being mentioned about the data, and I do generally have worries about the fact that the intrusion that the smart local energy systems could involve in people's lives, we need to know what that is and manage that out carefully. So the aggregation of data and the careful handling of data and the confidentiality of data is going to be critically important, because we could easily get burnt if there's a problem with hacking and or a variety of misuses of data. So we've got to be really careful on that.
Brilliant, and thank you for bringing up that data point, because I agree it's massively important. All right, I'm going to whistle round our three panelists, and I'm going to ask you for your 15-second kind of like takeaway points that you want everyone who's listening to this presentation and will listen to it afterwards to take away from this. So I'm going to go Rosanna, then Luke, then Neil, just so you know what's going on. And apologies, Rosanna, but on you go.
So I'd say everybody can have something to do about this, but I think what we have missed so far is the role of individual citizens and the training that we need to provide. We need to have, how we had in the COVID about face, space, those kind of simple things. We really need to get down to this kind of simple and clear understanding what to do to people in terms of transition as well. And that's the simplest thing that I can say that we need to do, essentially.
Brilliant. Please tweet us at EnergyREV _UK for any of your kind of like 4-word kind of like tweets for this. Luke.
Yeah, so just say thanks for inviting me along and having me at the discussion. I think the actual takeaway point for me was something that Rosanna said, that it's not just about those engineering and manufacturing skills, it's about the broader set of skills that everyone needs to have to deliver what is going to be a huge societal and economic transformation.
Brilliant, thank you, Luke. And Neil.
2 seconds, read the report.
Read the report, brilliant. Well, that is a sterling endorsement. So look, firstly, thank you all very much to Rosanna, to Luke and to Neil for answering the questions, for presenting the report, for being very forthcoming on your knowledge. Thank you very much to Maddie Morris in the background for actually putting all of this together and all of the actual hard work that goes into these things. The recording will be up on YouTube in due course. We don't have a title for our next one, and we're working out our program going forward. These are approximately monthly seminars, so if you've got a burning idea, please do email us. Either myself or Maddie will put the contact details in after this event as well. But also thank you to all of our participants for joining in, for some really excellent questions. Sorry if we didn't get to your question. We will take a note of them and see if we can get back to you on anything that's coming in, but there's some brilliant themes coming through in that and lots of interest and expertise shown in the questions in the way they're being asked. So thank you all for participating. Thank you to our panelists, and we hope you all have a good afternoon and see you soon.
Bye.